So while we're waiting for everybody to come in, who wants to share what their wins from today were? What's something goal of the day that you totally hit, or something from Ignite lately that you've been able to put into practice? Anybody? Afifa, what do you have going on?
You said my name perfectly. Thank you.
God lucky.
Well, I'm definitely been hitting that 10-5-1 social media. That's very easy.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm
Good.
on it all the time anyway, so it's very easy to reach out to people that way. I actually spoke to someone today who recently had a baby, and so she kind of like had less space in her house. I was like, oh, what are you planning on doing? You guys planning on um purchasing a bigger home, or what are the plans? Because now the baby's in the guest room. But they're gonna move out of the country. So I reached out to my PC coach and I'm like, hey, she wants to move out of the country. How do I connect these dots? Like, what are the steps to get things going? So I did that. And then I also was working on some marketing things, I guess, with like all the
Okay.
holidays coming up. So I was just trying to work on cards for like Thanksgiving and for the holidays. So I can just have everything printed tomorrow and just have them ready to mail out as the months change. Because that's where the holidays sneak up on me quickly. So
They
that's
do.
so that's what I've been working on today, and just getting those contacts and together for that.
That's awesome. Good for you. And how long have you been in real estate?
I joined 3 weeks ago. The day before was almost 4 weeks. I started the day before Ignite started. So I think it was like the 11th or 12th of September.
Okay. So,
And I am here in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the only one, I think, in this area that's been on these calls.
all right. Well, that's awesome. Good for you. Like, totally hit the ground running. So,
Thank you.
congrats.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Who else has their camera on? I love when people have their camera on. Catherine, hi. What worked for you today? What's your win for the day?
I kind of joined a little bit late, so I kind of caught only the tail end of FIFA, what she was kind of talking about. So can you just kind of fill me in on what you're looking for?
I just a win. What's something that went really well for you today? Maybe something that you have taken away from another session of Ignite that you've been able to implement. Anything? There's always a win. So, what was your win for the day?
Um, a good question. I've had a busy day. I've been running nonstop. So I would say my win is being able to make it here this evening. I've been working with a new client. And I'm trying to list 3 lots, but it's been like insane with some of the bumps that we've kind of come across along the way. So I've been learning a lot because I'm a new agent. Um, as well. So just trying to learn and been involved with like our town clerk, our county clerks, and things along that nature. So it's just been really interesting. So been being able to communicate with some of these new people has been, I feel like a win for me.
That's awesome. Good for you. And how long have you been an agent?
I got licensed in August. So fairly recent,
Very
two months-ish, I
recent.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
No,
actually
that's
going to ask you, Catherine, how are your land lots? Because I was going to ask you the last class, but we were so busy chatting. I was just like,
Oh
how
my
are
God.
those things going? I'm sure that's a
Yeah,
little different.
it is. It's totally different because, so just to kind of give you a backdrop a little bit, my new client, so it's been some bumps in the road. He actually had a death in his immediate family, so that kind of like stopped things for a few weeks, which I wasn't expecting. Of course, it was like, whoa, my first client, and he's already had this like traumatic thing happen, and so that was like, dealing with that situation in a different light. And so after a few weeks, this week he's reached out to me and was finally able to kind of like resume with paperwork. But then along the way, it's like the town has a different measurement for one of the lots versus what Matrix is showing. So I had to kind of dive in and figure out what is actually the measurement of this one particular lot, because he doesn't want to list just one at a time. He wants them to all listed at once, but they're all three separate listings. So it's just like, crazy trying to separate everything. And then we find out today that one of the lots actually has an easement on it with a driveway. So I've been learning a lot about that nature with this easement, that literally a driveway goes right through the middle of one of the lots. And it leads to a house back behind the lot, if you will. So this property, I'm working on that now, trying to get more proof on what actually this easement says and things like that. So that's where I'm at with those lots. If you
You're learning all the things. One of my
Yes.
favorite lines for my agents is like, real estate doesn't stop real estating. So you're getting like the full load. It's
Yes.
happening. Good
Yeah,
for
so
you
it's
though.
been interesting, but I've loved it along the way. It's been definitely a learning curve and not what I expected, of course, right? For like my first transaction, but
Yeah,
I'm up for it. I'm up for it. So
that's
that's
awesome.
my update, y'all.
Good for you. Anybody else? I always pick on people who have cameras on, so that should mean everybody should turn their camera on. But anybody else have something that they want to share? I know we're all trying to do multiple things at one time. All right, well, I'll tell you guys a little bit about me, and then we can dive into one of my favorite things, which is the make and receive offers. So my name's Jen Williams. I am in the Baltimore area. I am from here, but I was in the Marine Corps. I went in when I was 17, and so I was stationed in North Carolina for a little while before I made my way back. And I became a real estate agent by way of public school education when I decided I wanted to be a teacher after getting out of the military. So I feel like I'm incredibly lucky to be in Keller Williams, which focuses so much on coaching, training, tech, like all of the things that I love, and real estate. So, whatever you're doing right now, just know however you evolve through the process, like Keller Williams has what you're looking for, which is pretty amazing. And so, fast forward to now, I'm still agent on the only team that I've been on. I started as a solo agent, and then I joined a team with just really amazing agents on it. And then from there, I became the director of productivity for the Keller Williams Baltimore Market Center. And it's kind of wild to me. I'm still wrapping my brain around it. And I'm also our PC coach. So my days are pretty busy and it's pretty amazing. So I'm really excited to be here with you guys tonight. I love discussion. So as I move through some of these things, like pause me anytime. Questions are great. This one is also a little interesting because we're going to talk about making and receiving offers. While already I know that we've got 3 different areas going on, and I'm going to assume that there's a couple of more states in the mix too. So all of our contracts look different. So I want to start out just before we dive into it. Does everybody have access to their DocuSign or Dotloop, whichever one your market center uses? Have you seen your contracts? Anybody not seen a contract yet? Okay. So I'm going to use examples of contract that we have here in Maryland, understanding that I'm going to use some general terms with it because what my contract looks like in comparison to Georgia and then New York, right, Catherine? So what we have there, it's going to look different, but the concepts are still going to be the same. So let's not get hung up on what we're seeing, but let's talk about what are those terms, what are those conversations. And I love to learn from other people. My sister's an agent in Durham, North Carolina. They have different setups than we do. So this is also a time to educate everybody else on here about if you do something different in your state for your contracts, your terms are a little bit different, share that with us. Let's learn about that because all it does is strengthen one, our referral business as we move forward, and two, it really helps just make us that much stronger for our clients. So, like when you have somebody with a ton of land lots, you can be like, well, in South Dakota, they do XYZ, and it's kind of a weird fact, but people love hearing that stuff. So we're going to dive right into it. And the big thing that we're going to talk about with all of this is just making sure that you know what conversation to have with your client. So that's the big thing. I'll stop here. I'm sure everybody has talked to you about this one. If they haven't, it's here. So for me, the win-win or no deal is something that I really stand by in my business. And that's a big deal to me for my clients and also for my agents, right? Like at the end of the day, it's not always easy. There's the rocky things that come along with it for sure. And if it's not the right thing for everybody involved, then we should keep it moving. And so that's a really big one that comes into this when we're thinking about making and receiving offers. You know, we want that win-win for everybody at the end of it. You know, are we doing the right thing for everybody involved? And the other piece that we're going to talk a lot about is the communication aspect of it. You know, all of these apply every single time when we think about Keller Williams, but really when it comes to the offers, we want to focus on that win-win piece of it. So, you know, do we understand what the best practices are for your market, right? Like what's happening in my market might not be the same as yours. Although I'm gonna make a guess here. Who has an overflow of houses on the market right now? Anybody? Just so many. No, it's like slim pickings out there, you know. And when we look at those statistics, I do a weekly update every week. We dive into market statistics nationally, statewide, and then we dive into local markets. And that's a huge thing to help us understand when we're making an offer, when we're on the buy side, what's the best thing. And it also helps when we're having those conversations with a seller too. Let me set some expectations for you. Let's talk about what the right thing to do here is to leverage it in the best way possible, and really hitting those like pain points that sellers have of, you know, what's the price going to be? How much is my life going to be inconvenienced by this process? That's like a really big one. And then what's going to be the timeline? And market consistently drives those pieces. So both sides of it for making offers, understanding what's happening in our market is a really big deal. So many quotes all the time in Keller Williams. Gotta love them. I do like this though, because it's talking about how I'm not trying to make anybody do anything. I take basically what I did as an educator and I bring it into real estate. And how am I providing all of the facts? How am I informing you about the process? How am I putting everything in chronological order for you to understand what's happening now, what comes next, and then what we can anticipate? So that way you can make the best decision for you, and I can provide you the best service that you need in that process. And so that's one of the things as we go through this and we talk a little bit about the offer process. You know, what makes a winning offer is not always what's best for our client. How many of us have written an offer yet? Okay, that's why it's yet, right? It's to come. So that's all right. Just out of curiosity, when you're doing things in your market center, you know, are you in markets where do you have post-settlement occupancy where somebody closes on the home and then they can live in the home for a time period afterwards before the new buyer takes ownership? See a head nod from the FIFA.
We do have something similar to that, but it's not called exactly that, if you will, but similar, where you can still, you know, you can put that in your offer where you would want to, you know, live, say, in an additional couple of months or rent back from the new owner, if you will, something like along those lines, but so similar, yeah.
Okay, we call it rent back down here too. The technical term is post-settlement occupancy, but it's the same concept. Do you find that that's something that, you know, if you're in a business meeting at your market center, does anybody talk about how that's a strategy that helps their buyers win an offer? Or is there something else that pops up where people are talking about, like, when I do this, my buyer wins?
I haven't heard anyone discussing that as a win.
Okay. Have you heard anything like waiving inspections? If you're a due diligence state, having a higher due diligence because it's putting it all on the line.
I was gonna say here in New York State, people are like, I'm gonna say like probably 98% of buyers are waiving the inspection here.
Really?
Yes. They're like, I mean, and it's literally predominantly cash offers too. It's crazy because I'm like, oh my God, how do these people have this much cash to put down? But a lot of people, it's cash and they're borrowing from their parents, family and friends, or maybe it's like a different type of loan where they're getting the money for the loan, up front and then, paying that per se each month. But yeah, it's crazy right now, like the area I'm in, it's insane.
You're in Rochester, Catherine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I'm gonna tell you guys like a little like, so my mind was blown, not to interrupt class, I'm sorry, but
No,
this
go
is
for
like,
it.
so there was a house for listed, and I live in the Finger Lakes area, so we have a lot of lakes and things like that. Like I'm about 5 hours from New York City for those that aren't familiar with like Rochester area. So I'm not like New York City. I'm up in the cornfields and lake country, if you will, wine country. There was a house up here literally about a 30-minute drive from where I live, and it was listed for $600,000. And there was two people fighting over it. Long story short, it went for $1.6 million.
Oh, was
And
that one a cash offer? 'Cause I wouldn't know that person.
yes, it was a cash offer.
Jeez. All right.
So that's what the market's doing around me, just with buyers and like what a shortage of housing there is in my area right now. It's crazy.
That's
Thank
crazy.
you. Thank you for sharing that. That is a huge issue for everybody across the board, right? And I feel like I've watched where it went from, a first time home buyer still having to prepare and get everything together and make sure they have down payment to like the wildness of COVID, where it's like houses on the market and it's just total frenzy and everything was being waived. And then it felt like it stepped back for a minute. And now we're kind of getting back to that place because the inventory is so, so low. And it's hard because then we have to watch the creativity come in where you're talking about like people are borrowing, they're finding other ways to finance. And the thing that I feel is our duty as agents is if my client wants a home, and it is not the right time for them to buy that home, I need to make sure that I'm having that conversation with them when they're telling me that they're putting absolutely everything on the line and crossing every single, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I'm not telling them that they shouldn't buy a house, but I'm asking them, are you sure that these are the things that you are okay with doing? And at the end of the day, you sign that dotted line and the house becomes yours and you're still going to be okay with everything. Because it has become a market where, gonna be honest, I don't think that I would have bought my house without waiving inspections. Like I'm a mom and I can fix some things, but I can't fix all of that stuff. Like I didn't want to waive inspections. And then I talk to people and they're doing the same things where it's, like cash offer right now. What we see a lot of is if my favorite clients are sellers and buyers, right? Like let's get two in one. So if we have somebody who's selling, then we try to leverage that post-settlement occupancy. So that way they have the cash to buy the next house and it makes it a little bit easier, but then they're doing the cash. And then we're talking about waiving the inspections. And then suddenly they have no way to terminate the contracts within their rights. They've given up everything. And so, this kind of market, it's fun for me because I love negotiations, right? Like I want to like let's get into it. And it also reminds me of how heavy this is. We are working with people for what is most often their largest financial transaction of their life, right? Like, and that is not something to be taken lightly. At the end of the day, I like my life. Like, I am thankful for the fruits of my labor. And at the same time, I am not doing something just because I want that commission check at the end. I know what that, when I come from a place of contribution and like, let's have real conversations, that it's all going to work out one way or another. And that's what we really need to take into our conversations with our clients when we're talking about making these offers. Because when we are seeing this craziness, like we're watching somebody get really excited and it's going up and up and up. And all of a sudden, that they're at like the max, they are borrowing money, again, like, is this the right thing? And maybe it is, right? Like, I can't tell them that. I just have to ask the right questions. And so as we're prepping to make these offers and we're discussing these terms, we want to go through the different pieces with them. So we know, buyer makes an offer, either it's going to get accepted, it's going to get countered, or it's going to get rejected, right? Like, we've got one of the three. So obviously we want the acceptance the first time around, keep things going. Sometimes that counter goes back and forth. And again, we have to go back and talk to our client about what is it that you're okay with doing and still being able to buy this house. So with that, there are tons of different terms that we can bring into it. Price is obviously one that everybody is concerned about. And then we have the inspections, which is the other one. Are you guys in states where the appraisal contingency is automatically a part of your financing addendum, or does that become a separate contingency for you?
I think it's separate for us here.
Okay. Do you know about yours, Catherine, with the financing contingency?
Yeah, I think to be honest, I mean, I'm not 100% sure because I haven't really been on that end of things yet, but I think it is separate,
Okay.
more separate.
So and I'm going to pull over a very simple offer. This one doesn't have a financing. Don't look at my screen, me and my silliness. Every time I teach something, like, I need to change that, and then I totally forget that it's there. So my bad. Hopefully Alana doesn't look at it. Anyway, so here in Maryland, our appraisal contingency is built into our financing addendums, although it can be waived. So we can still waive it. It's just automatically built into it. So I'm always curious if it's in there. So we know, like, VA and FHA, the appraisal has to meet, right? That creates where the deal can potentially fall apart. So that's always going to be the big one. We have the price that our client's going to determine. What are they going to pay for it? Hopefully we're able to run some comps that can support what it is that they're offering. Understanding, like with Catherine's example, that it can get real wild sometimes. Are they going to hold inspections, and then discussing what that contingency means for them? The financing portion of it. So just because they're making an offer on it, we still need to make sure that we have the proof of funds or our pre-approval letter. And then any other contingencies. This one has post-settlement occupancy in it. We have where our title company handles everything. I know in some other states it's really ran by the attorney is the focus, and here the title company has the attorney working for them. So it's a similar but different. So this is an example of a Maryland's contract, just to walk through some pieces of it, and let me know what's similar and different to yours. This one is a cash offer. So we didn't have a financing addendum to include in it, which made it a lot cleaner. Automatically, we deposit our EMD. So we're not a due diligence state. For anybody, who is a due diligence state? Nobody? Oh, interesting. I thought there would be one. Okay, so earnest money deposit and due diligence are not the same thing. They get often confused. So earnest money is like that good faith amount that we put up. Our client, the buyer, puts that money up. As long as they meet their contractual obligations, even if they terminate the contract, like within the inspection contingency or for appraisal reasons, they will get that EMD back. It's not on the line the same way as with the due diligence. If you're in a due diligence state, you put that money up and you're basically saying, like, yes, seller, you get to keep that money. So that's also something, two different ways that money gets put up front, and making sure that our client understands when we're going through the terms, is this your money that will come off of the cash to close at the end, or is this money that is theirs no matter what? So those questions are going to be really, really important to understand in your market and to make sure it's really clear to your clients as well. So then, Andy, we do the settlement date. Who has an idea of what the average closing time is in your market?
I know for us, it's like once there's been an accepted offer, it usually takes, I mean, on the short end of things, about 28, 30 days.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah, mine is 21. That's so funny. I actually have it on a sticky note just sitting in front of me. 21 days.
Okay. So here I would say that, our high average is about 30 days. I like to give my lender panic attacks and do like 18-day closings. Cash offers, we can close as soon as title's done with it, which is typically less than 2 weeks. So everybody's a little bit different, but those are also pieces that, again, we want to make sure that our clients understand. So hopefully during the buyer consultation, we're having a conversation where we're kind of explaining some of the terms, what to expect, knowing that our client, especially for our first time home buyer, they're like, what are you talking about? I don't know what's going on. And then we're going to come back and chunk it down as we get closer. And just making sure that they understand what their options are. I like to make sure when I'm talking to the lender that if there's financing involved, whatever settlement date that we are eyeing up is one that the lender can commit to, because we certainly don't want to have to try to extend a settlement, which obviously if you're a seller, you're not going to be happy about, right? So that win-win mentality from the beginning, let's be really transparent and make sure everything is pulled together the best that we can. Then along with that, if there is going to be anything additional, so we have the, typical ones, and then if there's going to be the post-settlement occupancy or the rent back, if we're going to include any. Here we have ground rent. Nobody else has that. It's literally a holdover from Lord Baltimore. Like we're going back to pre-America being America. We still have that here. So you guys won't have that, just us. Although I'm sure that there's a thing or two in your area that you're like, yeah, nobody else is dealing with this one probably. And then any of the lead paint disclosures is something else that we're always going to see in our contract. So anything pre-1978, we want to make sure that that's been disclosed. You can do also an appraisal with a cash offer, and it's just an additional addendum. And so for us, we have a healthy contract. It is 11 pages. Not as bad as some, definitely bigger than others. We also have a lot of addendums to choose from, and that's really where it comes in when we're talking about what are those terms. Best practice before you put in an offer, call the listing agent. Who is in an area where the listing agent can discuss the terms? If they have an offer in hand, can the listing agent tell another agent about what they've received?
Here in New York, it's really agent discretion. Some agents will tell you, some won't. So it's just really kind of based on the agents, could be based on the firm they're with, just could be based on, whether they are nice or not kind of thing here.
Okay. Here we are not supposed to. So the only time that we really hear that is if the agent is also the seller themselves. Typically though, we call them helpful hints, because that's the best that we can really do. And with that though, it means that we don't really have a baseline to go back to a client and say, you want to buy this house, they have an offer in, this is what we need to beat out. It really becomes, let's talk about these terms and what's going to be the strongest. And that takes me back to that market update each time. What are things selling for? How long are they staying on the market? What does the seller need? Does the seller need a quick closing because they need the cash to get to their next closing? Does the seller need time in the house afterwards because they're not ready to go to the next place just yet, but we're presenting a deal that they can't pass up on? Does the seller want to avoid dealing with inspections? Here we don't have as is for inspections. You do inspections, and that the buyer has the right to negotiate. The seller cannot terminate right away, although a buyer here can do an inspection and then terminate within the contingency and get their EMD back. So there's, not everything here is in the seller's benefit like it is in some other markets, which is good for our buyers. And it also means that we really, really need to make sure that we're doing something that's going to be beneficial for the seller when we do it. The questions that you want to ask, though, are really like, what is the listing agent telling you that they are going to need? How can you pull that together into a contract that's going to make sense for your client? And is the lender 100% behind, or real estate attorney and title company behind the terms that you're putting in? And that's a spot that just I watch agents sometimes get a little tripped up on, because they're like, well, my client said that we can do this, and that's great. Did the rest of the parties involved with it say that that's doable too? Like, we would all love to say that my client can close in a week, but we know they can't, right? So let's just confirm all of those pieces going into it. So when you're looking at a contract for you, I would definitely say, like, I do what we call, I have an offer writing booklet. So even though we have transaction coordination, I love transaction coordination. I don't know if you guys have that, but go for it, right? Like, lean into the leverage, because I like to focus on my income producing activities. And even though I can write an offer quickly, even though I can pull together the documents, I can do what I need to, I want to make sure that I'm taking that time and I'm using it the best way possible. So that way I am doing my lead generation, I'm focusing on my appointment setting, and then my transaction coordinator will handle the details. I still have to be able to tell my transaction coordinator the details, and I still need to be able to communicate it with all parties. So anytime, if you haven't filled out a form yet, I would recommend just downloading it. Like, go into your DocuSign, download the forms. Maybe they're available to you in your market center. You should have access, hopefully, maybe through your local boards if you're set up like us, and take a look. What are the things that you as the client would have a question about if you weren't the real estate agent? Because if you haven't had a chance to go through your contract yet, you're going to have questions, and it's better to figure them out now than when your client asks you for the first time. So go through the fake offer writing process. When you're looking at yours, what are the questions that need to be filled in? And what would your buyer client need to understand in order to make that offer? Does that make sense? What are some of the things that you do see in your market as far as like buyer concerns about making an offer? Has anybody had a conversation with a potential client about, like, hey, I'm interested in buying a home and I don't know, if I could because of XYZ? Okay. All right.
I'm laughing that you're laughing, Catherine. So I'm like, where is everybody today? Because we usually have a lot of chatty Cathys in here.
I was gonna say, like, I don't want to be the only one chatting, so I'm trying to keep quiet so other people can participate.
Where is everyone?
So,
I'm
I'm just
here,
trying to.
y'all. I'm here.
Oh, I hear Alicia.
Girl, yes, I'm
She is-
here.
she
I'm
is
just,
probably the God baby with her.
not today. She with her mama.
Oh.
I'm just
I have
listening because
the
I
only
don't
thing I
really.
can take. Oh, sorry. The only
No, it's
thing
okay.
I
I'm
can
saying
come
I'm
up
just
with
listening
is
because I don't really know too much about the contract. I never really had to fill out well, I have a practice contract, but I never did anything with a client. So that's why I'm quiet. I don't really know what to say. So, but I'm here. I'm listening, Jen.
I didn't mean to call y'all out. I was just saying.
No, call them all out. All of them. It's fine. Let's make noise. Yes. It's good to listen. I totally get it. And all of our contracts are a little different. I know that makes this like, I can show you mine. Yours isn't going to look the same. Any questions that you have, though, like, this is the perfect time to ask it. And especially because we're in different markets, it's also going to make us think about what you're doing in your market might become a strategy that would work well in mine, and we just haven't done that here yet. So don't hesitate to pipe up with anything that comes to mind.
So one thing I will notice, or I don't know if you guys have in your state, escalations
Mhm.
in regards to, buyers making offers. And like when I first kind of started learning about it, it was like super confusing and kind of like, oh my God, like it's kind of scary a little bit to think about. You have all these offers that are due at a certain time, right? And you're competing with all of these people. And then to get the escalation end of things right, well, I'll pay this amount of money over this person's amount, or maybe a percentage. So that whole thing is just honestly kind of scary, for me to think about. I understand, the pros of it and the benefits of it, but it is still very new to my mind, on how that all works, if you will.
Yeah, so that is a really big one. And when we're kind of thinking about the way that it goes, like here, we have a lot of agents who say no escalation clause, submit your highest and best. And then they'll say, like, we have offers in hand, deadline is set for this. And you'll have agents who will revise the offer with their clients and resubmit them. I have one with escalation clauses before. It is, think about how it's a little like wrapping your brain around it as somebody in real estate, and then think about what it's like for our clients who are not in real estate, and they're like, you want me to do, they're like, how do I win? And then somebody always knows somebody who has an escalation clause, and that's how it comes up, because I usually don't bring it up, and they're like, can I do that? And I try to explain it to them, and they're like, so you're telling me I'm going to go up in increments of $1,000, but $10,000 over what I'm offering, but I might not have to pay that much. Like, there's so many variables to it, and it is a tough one. I would also recommend that when escalation clauses come into effect, like if your client's going to do one, make sure if they are financing that they understand very clearly what the difference between those payments and that potential cash to close is going to be from their offer price to the top one. Because that is also something where people get a little hung up on it, where they're like, they don't see the change in the offer price. So their brain doesn't really comprehend that, like, no, you're agreeing to pay more. Like, it's going to cost you more if you get this accepted. That one, it is really good when that's the norm in the market. It's also one where the client needs, for us at least, they have to agree. Like, we'll see commonly, we'll agree to go up $1,000 to beat out the other person up to X amount of dollars over our offer price. And then the listing agent has to provide the first page of that contract to show us what it was that we were beating. So that way, like, and that becomes a part of our actual, like, ratified contract then, is that first page of the contract that we beat out. So that way we have proof that we're not just going up to this offer price for no reason. So if you ever have a client who asks you, like, how do I know? I would assume it's going to be the same for you, where it's because the listing agent's providing that contract to you. Just the first page. That's it. So as we're going through, like, my contract, we talk about those price and terms. We have all the seller disclosures. Hopefully the seller's disclosing everything that they're supposed to. We have a lot of seller disclosures in the state of Maryland. I know not every state has as many as we do. We also want to know what's conveying with the property. And so for us here, we have what's called the inclusions exclusions document. And so so many. So ours looks exactly like this. And then you check off each thing that's going to stay. And if it's not checked off, it's not staying with it. If it's not additionally written in, it's not staying with it. And if there's something specific that's not going to, that typically we would expect to convey, that will be in there. Now, here's the thing for us. If there's a washer and dryer in the house and it's not checked off on this, that washer and dryer is not staying. So just because it's in the house doesn't mean that it's going to be there. Usually in our market, the appliances stay. However, I know in other markets they don't, and that's something that the buyer also has to plan on. So for you guys, is that appliances stay, go? Is there a norm there for you?
Appliances do not stay in Georgia.
Oh,
Do
okay.
not stay unless they list it as these items will stay.
And is it common? It's like the norm that the appliances go with the seller?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
like suspected that they're not going to stay. But some people, like the few open houses that I've done, they have left the appliances, like including the washer and dryer.
Okay. What about for you, Catherine?
Yeah, most of the so if it's attached to the home, it stays. But like your refrigerator, washer and dryer, they are supposed to go unless it's written within the offer or, listed within like the MLS with the listing coming with the home. But for the most part, anything that's not attached does not stay.
Okay. Alicia, just because I know your name, does it stay in your market? Afifa did this to you, just so you know.
No, it's okay. I don't know. That's why I'm not talking. I, I have no idea.
Okay. And
I
that's
would
totally
think,
fine.
like, it's just like everybody else. It's like it should be marked off because I just don't see you trying to buy somebody's house and they still got stuff in there. You just think you about to take everything. So I would think it has to be marked off. But I'm not too sure because I haven't even got there yet with my business. So.
Okay. So that's something that, if somebody is not sure about, I would say look in your MLS and see, like, does it usually say that it stays or goes? For us in our market, it usually stays. We usually have all of the appliances that are there. Occasionally the washer and dryer doesn't for some reason, but typically that's marked off and it's staying. And it's kind of like the expectation here for most home buyers that they're not going to have to buy appliances when they move in. Yeah, but my sister in North Carolina, like, she was, mind blown when I told her that, because for them there, the appliances are always going. So, and it's a conversation that they have with their clients in the beginning about, like, if you're a first time home buyer, you need to make sure that you have in your budget that appliances need to be a part of your move-in package, because if not, it's going to be a little weird for you for a minute, right? So, like, those are some of the things that figuring out what makes sense in your market, what's the most common, and then having the right conversation with your client in the beginning so they understand what those terms are going to look like. Somebody's telling me that their cash to close is taking up every single cent that they have. And then we're looking at a house where they're not going to have the appliances. Like, that's not going to be the win-win that they're looking for necessarily, right? And so I need to ask them that question, like, how are you handling this? Because in that moment, they're like, I just want the house. And I have to step in professionally and say, and how are you going to do these next steps? Like, I can't provide them for you, but I could definitely make sure you know that they need to be provided. Does that fit into what you're able to do if you buy this home? So we also put on there, like, anybody, most people, I will say, fill out the utilities. We can request the average of the utilities from the past 12 months as well. So especially, if we have a buyer who's very concerned about monthly expenses, we can kind of get an idea of what that looks like, figuring out whether something is going to be public, is it going to be septic? We have an interesting mix going on down here of where those lines are between what's public sewer and then where we cross the line and it becomes septic. Community septic is a thing in a couple of areas as well, which is a whole different one. And then we have to disclose all of the leased items as well. So we still have a lot of homes that have oil tanks, right? Like, that's how they were built back in the day. And we have a lot that haven't converted. So if there's going to be, fuel that is a leased item for the tank itself, solar panels are a hot item down here. They do not increase the value of homes in our area. I know they do in some other places. It is not necessarily helpful for most of the homes here to have solar panels on them. An alarm system that needs to be disclosed if there's going to be, somebody needs to take it over. And then we do some water treatment system depending on, I'm city-ish. If we go a little further out, I grew up where it was not city-ish at all around here, and there was a lot more of the water treatment systems in that area. So those are some of the things too, is you're looking at your offer with your client, right? Like going through these pieces as part of that checklist for yourself is really, really important. So that way, you know that your client understands fully what is coming with the house and what isn't, and never hesitate to ask the listing agent questions. It is okay. I remember what it was like to be brand new. I am a PC coach. I work with brand new agents every day, and everybody's always nervous. Like, I don't want to ask the wrong question. It is better to ask the wrong question than not to ask the question that needs to be asked. Ask the question, right? Like if you are not sure, just ask the question. And if you don't know how to ask the question to the listing agent, ask the question to an agent and literally role play it, right? Like just like we role play things that we're going to talk to our clients about. If you need to role play how to talk to the co-op agent, go for it. But just make sure you're asking the question and anything that comes up with that. And then we have, after that period, we'll go through all of that, and then we'll talk about exactly what it would mean for the seller to accept the offer at that point. So what are the next steps from there? If we have the whole offer pulled together, we've talked about the price, we've gone through the different terms, I've talked to them about the comps, do they know what they're getting into? Have we reviewed all of the disclosures? Have we made sure that there's not anything unexpected? Do we know what's coming with the property, and have we clarified any of those questions? For us, EMD is typically about 1%. It's not a high amount. Somebody can put up higher if they want to, but because most of the time the money would come back to the buyer, it's not that same sense of urgency to put a large amount on the line. And then we go through, this is what it looks like for you to do inspections, making sure our clients understand that the inspection is something they pay for out of pocket. If the deal falls apart, they don't get that money back. They paid for a service. The same thing with the appraisal. If they pay for the appraisal and the deal falls apart, they don't get that back. And what are the terms of the financing? And we have where our clients have to initial the pre-approval letter that goes with the offer. So that way it's very clear that they know that their lender said that they can afford this house. And I pitched this up forward on my team. We also have our clients initial an estimate that comes from the lender as well, and we keep it for our records. Also helpful because if things start to change dramatically, you will see sometimes where what a client thinks they're going to get from financing in the beginning can sometimes change as more information is submitted. I want to make sure that we have that baseline, because the financing contingency, if something changes, I want to make sure that we have that proof to show like this is what they thought they were getting into and this is what it looks like now. And they have the right to terminate based on that. So all of those things, it's like a lot of questions for everybody. And I would challenge you, I know that there's the whole offer writing checklist that we get for Ignite, and it's good. It's very good. It also doesn't break things down for you the way that you might need to ask them in your market. So really think about what are some of those questions that a buyer in your market needs to be asked in order to put together the best offer for them. What are some of the things that especially a first-time home buyer might have no idea that they need to know about when they're getting ready to pull an offer together?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Under number 2, where it says lease items, I'm familiar with, and I'm in Maryland, so I'm familiar with this, but the solar panels, the alarm, and the water, I understand that. But the home that I had the oil tank. How is that considered lease?
So not all of them are. That's
Okay.
a really good question, Dawn. So some of them have where it is the tank itself is leased. And then some of them, like the tank has been there since the beginning of time and somebody just comes and fills it up. So it definitely depends. We also have some of the newer homes have propane tanks. So you'll see that one too. So say you're in a house where everything's electric, it's a new build, they wanted gas though. And so they have propane just for the stove. and then that propane tank is typically leased. So you'll see some like that, and then like what you just said, where the oil tank is there, and then it just has to be filled.
Okay, I got you.
Where in Maryland are you?
I'm in Towson,
Where is it?
Towson, Baltimore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're super close to me. I'm at Keller Williams Metropolitan, so I'm the one
Okay.
in Canton.
Okay, I'm in Legacy.
Okay. All right. Awesome. We partner on things sometimes, so hopefully I'll run into you. Yeah.
And
Okay.
I do have another question. I mean, I was going to say something, but since I'm not on camera, I just didn't want to do that. But can we go back just a little bit to the ground rent? Because I'm familiar with that as well. So, and this was a question, um, and I was looking at it, and because my dad is familiar with it too, and you have older people that tell you what to do, and it's just like really crazy. So with the ground rent, my home was fee simple. And I thought that we could do ground rent with that, but you can't take it back to ground rent if it's already fee simple. Am I correct?
Correct. So I don't want to tell you what year it was because I don't want to misspeak on that. But there was a year where you are no longer allowed to make a new ground rent in the state of Maryland because it literally, again, is a holdover from Lord Baltimore, which is a crazy thing to say in 2023. So new ground rent cannot be created. And if you look up an address in our SSTAT system, if there is not a ground rent redemption, then there is not ground rent on there. So you want to look, there's two different things when you go into SSTAT at the top of it where it talks about ground rent. If ground rent is not registered on the property, no ground rent can come back around. I'm actually helping an agent currently. He's just got under contract. They were sent a ground rent disclosure. And then when we looked it up, it didn't have ground rent in the SSTAT, and the attorney confirmed that there is no ground rent. So the buyer, I don't know if the seller was still paying it. I certainly hope not, but the buyer does not have to pay it because if the ground rent is not registered in SSTAT, you are not legally bound to do anything with it.
So then here's another question, and I was looking at that today. So if you do have a ground rent, at some point, can you just outright buy the ground?
Mm-hmm.
And but then I saw some spots where it said that they won't even allow you to do that. So sometimes you can and sometimes you can't. Is that correct?
So ground rent can be redeemed. I would say go to the Maryland.gov website, look up the ground rent, and there's a whole process there that tells you how to redeem it. If you haven't paid in a certain amount of time, there's one form that you fill out. If you have paid more recently, there's a different form that you fill out, and then it just takes time for it to be documented in our land records, and then you're done with it. But because of the nature of it and the fact that it's not like anything else in the country, I mean, genuinely not like anything else. I'm sure, people are like, what in the world are they talking about right now? It is something that is very much so going away. So it is redeemable. And the state made laws about that. So it cannot be created and they have to be redeemable.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, those are good questions. It's a strange thing that we've got going on here. So very good question. Some of the other things that, to think about, obviously we've talked about the buyer pre-approval letter, making sure that how my clients always are initialing that. Home warranty, that's a really big one. I ask those questions when we're doing the exclusive buyer agency agreements and our brokerage documents. Do you know what a home warranty is? Do you know what home warranties actually do? It is not you are going to get one or you are not going to get one conversation. I just want to make sure that they understand that home warranties are out there. If you feel like it's the right thing for you, we can certainly see if that's something that a seller intends on including, if that is something that you want to explore on your own, and making sure as well that we're explaining, depending on what home warranty product you buy, does not cover everything. So really making sure that somebody understands what they're choosing with that. I'm not, again, telling somebody what to choose. I just want to make sure that they understand that there's differences in home warranty products. And then anything else that we're adding into it, if there's any kind of special addendums that we're adding in to improve the offer, or if there's something that we need to review new construction around here or anywhere where something was recently replaced, a lot of times we'll have a notice of deferred water, or an extra bill that goes along with it, or an additional tax assessment at times. And we just want to make sure that our clients know all of those pieces. Like in
And how to
Baltimore
get
City,
that volume real low.
I'm sorry. Maybe that wasn't meant for me. Okay. So we want to make sure that we're just going through all of the different pieces, asking all of the right questions, and just, again, have that checklist for yourself. What are some of the things that you want to know that you have each time that you're asking your clients? And then as we pull those together, you know, again, whether you're writing the offer yourself or you are having a transaction coordinator do it, you still need to have the same information. And now comes the presentation of the offer themselves. I have a very specific order for how I pull together an offer when I'm sending it to a listing agent, because I know when I'm on the list side, there are certain things that make sense for me to see first. And we'll talk about that kind of in tandem here. So when I'm making an offer for a buyer, I have my offer summary, because again, depending on who is handling the transaction on the other side, I want it to be as easy and straightforward as possible for the person on the other side. Why? Because when I'm easy to work with, they want to work with me, right? Like, understand that the relationships that we have with other agents really do play a role in our ability to do the right thing for our clients. So let's make it as easy as possible for people to work with us. Have some type of offer summary. I have this as my first page, because then that way everybody who gets a copy, whether it's the lender, the title company, the co-op agent, their transaction coordinator, I've had where on the other side of a transaction, an agent felt really ill, terrible situation. Other people had to step in. And the fact that things were really easily summarized helps out, right? So, like, what ways can we make this as smooth as possible? And me taking 3 minutes in the beginning to fill in this, it's worth it. I also, in the email itself, am making sure that I am summarizing these exact same pieces. So that way, the agent doesn't necessarily have to dive in and pull out everything from the contract. They know the big terms that we're presenting to them. So I'm going to have my summary first. I took out my client's proof of funds here because everybody doesn't need to see what they had going on in their bank account. But that typically would have been the next thing for me, is that I have either the proof of funds or the pre-approval letter. And that's because on the listing side, after I've reviewed the terms, especially if I'm in a multiple offer situation, I'm taking those terms and I'm putting them into a spreadsheet to make it very easy for my client to compare. My next step is that I'm verifying the financing of this person who is submitting the offer. So I am calling whatever lender is providing us that pre-approval letter if I'm on the list side. On the buyer side, I'm including that lender in the email that I am sending to the listing agent. So that way, again, I'm making it as easy for them as possible. And the lenders that I work with on a regular basis, no, like, we have our process. And if you got stuck working with me because my client brought you along, I am letting you know what the process is, right? Because I want my client to win. And I know that when we're on the same team, they want my client to win too. And the process is, if we're on the buy side, when I submit this offer, I am making sure that the lender knows, and that lender is both email responding to what I just sent with the offer, saying how good to go our client is, and they're also calling that agent to make it as easy as possible. So the the listing agent doesn't have to go through and make that call. We're preemptively making it happen for them. And so that way, whatever questions the listing agent might have, of course, asking within the rights of what we can ask, they are getting answered, and they're able to go back to their seller client and say, not only are these the terms that you told me that you wanted that I was able to pass on, but everything is good to go. Their lender is on board. I've already been able to talk to them, and the title company is one that's reputable in the area. So those are little things that might not seem like a big deal, but it's really, really major in getting an offer accepted. When I'm on the list side, if I can't get in touch with a lender, I'm obviously still presenting all offers, right? Like if it comes through in the state of Maryland, we're presenting offers until it's closed. Even if they're like totally under contract in 2 days before closing, if some wild person out there wants to send us an offer, we're legally bound to present that offer to our clients. I do very clearly, though, let my clients know when we're sitting down and we're reviewing offers. Yep, here's all of the terms for this one. Everything was in order. Already had a conversation with the lender. Everything's in order. Could not get in touch with the lender. And I make notes so that way there is no guesswork for anybody. I called 3 times, did not get to talk to that lender. If you're the seller of a house, which offer, if they're exactly the same, and your agent is saying, I talked to that lender because they called me, or the other one where I called 3 times and couldn't get in touch with them, as the seller client, which one do you feel like is the better offer?
The one that you talk to.
Absolutely, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. So when we're taking those steps, that's again like a small thing. It makes such a big difference. And you're also really presenting to your client as well, like what a team effort you guys have going on there. So I encourage you, like if that's something that helps in your market, if it's not being done, make sure that you're talking to the lender about it of how can we do this? How do we really make sure that we're presenting something that's incredibly strong? And getting in front of it, again, making it easy for them makes a big, big difference. So I have that pre-approval. I'm making sure, whatever information they need is in there. And then we go into the contracts. I'll do here, we have an escrow agreement. So if a title company is holding the escrow instead of the market center, then we have to include that. And then I'll do the actual financing addendum. And then money stuff is out of the way, and we go into the property inspections. If I have anything additional, like a post-settlement occupancy, I'll put it there, and then seller disclosures, and then anything additional, like if I need to include our affiliated business disclosure, if there's a RESPA, anything else goes at the end. I also always have a full PDF of the MLS in there along with the tax record. Anybody want to speculate why it's good to have the MLS full PDF included in your offer? Is everybody in a market where the seller still typically pays the buyer agency compensation? Does every single seller pay buyer agency compensation in your markets? So this is a thing now, right? And it's been a thing. There were not always buyer agents. I mean, they came before I was around. But buyer agency is really something that was just like came about in the 90s. So now we're at a place where people felt like conversations weren't being held as transparently as they should have, which is unfortunate. And so not all sellers are going to pay buyer agency compensation. Typical for us, I will say that in my market, it is still typical that a seller is paying that. And sometimes it's not. And then sometimes there is that unfortunate reality that we have seen where what is in MLS when an offer is submitted is not what is in MLS when an offer is accepted. So I like to assume the best. And I also know that when I minimize opportunities, I don't have to worry about anything. So I always have a conversation with my clients about buyer agency compensation, what that means for them, potential, seller versus them paying, what that conversation is. I also like to include that MLS full printout because that way I know that whatever was promised at the offer is still what we have, because I now have this initialed date stamped document showing that everybody saw it. Now, go ahead, Afifa.
So at what point, thank you, Chase. So at what point are you printing it to make sure there's no discrepancies?
I do it when we're submitting the offer. So sometimes an agent will tell you in the directions, at least in our market, like they don't want the MLS. That's fine. My client is still going to initial it. One, I want my client to know that it says on there, and for us, what the MLS, or I'm sorry, what the buyer agency compensation will be. So that way as well, I'm having a conversation with them if it doesn't match what we put in the buyer agency agreement. But that's at the offer. So when we're submitting it, I literally put it in as a PDF and I have them initial on the bottom of it and I'm reviewing with them. Also a good opportunity where if you notice that something that's on that inclusions or your conveyances doesn't line up with what's in MLS, that you want to ask those questions too. And so again, like that level of transparency, I let my clients know, like, I'm going to tell you everything that comes along. They also see me calm, cool, and collected, right? Like, I'm not going to have anxiety over this. I'm just letting you know that there is a discrepancy here and it's solvable. All of this stuff is fixable. And it is. I will tell you that, like, all things in real estate are fixable. It just might not be fixed the way that we want it to be, but it is fixable. So in minimizing some of those opportunities, we don't have to worry about the fix down the road. I also like to include the tax record. For us here, we call it our SSTAT because Maryland has these funny little acronyms going on here. But the tax record is a nice one to include. One, I've had where it was not put in the contract correctly that it was an estate sale. So when I pulled that tax record, I realized, they were totally in the right to sell the house. Nobody did anything wrong on that front. It wasn't fraud. Just an agent made a mistake in how the documents were set up. And because of the tax record, I was able to see that. So we were able to get some of that fixed. So it gives you a chance to really take a look, like, do we need to address something from the beginning? And it's also helping your clients to understand what their taxes look like. Should be an MLS, at least for us. I don't know if it is for you. And we know that not everything ends up in MLS as accurately as it should be, right? So it doesn't hurt to do that extra look and just make sure that our client's seeing all of the facts again before they submit that. So once I have all of that pulled together, my client has signed, I'm making sure, before that even happens, I've already updated in commands, I've taken the contact and turned them into an opportunity. I'm putting them in the right stage. I'm adding in the details for the house. It's so much easier when you do that in the beginning. So I would say always start in commands for your offers. Details go in there. When you sync the transaction, whether it's syncing to Dotloop or DocuSign, details are going to come over from command. So some things will automatically be filled in there for you. And then you can go in both of those signing platforms and add into the details everything else. So it'll autofill a lot of stuff for you, makes it really easy. And then I'm going to download it. For us, we download and combine into one document. It's not considered really professional if somebody's sending another agent something directly from DocuSign or Dotloop. Tendency is we want to see one PDF sent over. So we send that, and then I do my email summary. Again, I'm including the lender and the title company, and then I'm calling that listing agent each time. I'm calling them, I'm letting them know that the offer came through. I'm again asking them, is there a deadline set? When are you presenting this offer? Obviously, our buyers are anxious, they want to hear back. And I just, let the agent know, like, I just want to set the right expectations. I don't want to bug you. Let me know so that way I can let them know, and then I'll know when to follow up with you. If they don't answer, then I shoot them a text. we all love text. It's 2023, right? So like we like text, but I'll call first because that's the right thing to do. And if they don't answer, I'm transparently not leaving a voicemail. They probably aren't checking it anyway, to be honest with you, is what I find with half the agents I work with. So then I just shoot them a text. And then I just have to wait for whatever somebody has to tell me about the offer. What questions do we have about that process?
I do have a question. Just the
Okay.
last part, what you said. So when you complete all of that, you do all of that in DocuSign or Dotloop. And then how do you present it as the buyer's agent? How do you present that?
So I download one PDF document. So I'm combining the documents I download into one PDF. It always starts with my cover letter. I have the exact same order for everything. And I will say, find your order, because that way you also know if you're missing something too before you send the offer off. It's very helpful. And then I'm emailing and I'm calling and I think that was what I said.
Okay, I got you. So when you make the PDF with all of the forms, you send that in the email.
I
And
do, yes.
okay, got you, got you.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, just one PDF. Is anybody somewhere where it's different for you, or you heard different about how to send the offer over instead of one PDF that it's in multiple? I'm gonna go with no on that one. Okay. So those are the big things for us. Here in Maryland, we can submit the earnest money deposit after contract acceptance. So we don't have to run around with a check and deposit it and then possibly give it back. Also don't have to run around with checks anymore because we can wire things. I never want to hold somebody's check. I am not great with paper. I love the fact that everything is electronic these days. It is good for everybody, right? So I always let my clients know I 100% will do whatever you need, and wire is an amazing option. Also, they know no matter what that it's going to the title company, and the title company sends them the information about how to do that through the secure portal. It's very, very straightforward. And for somebody who's not okay with that, I definitely walk them through all of the steps, but you want to let them know like that's what comes next from it. So that way somebody always has an idea. And that's the expectation setting that I'm doing throughout a process, throughout a transaction. We're in a showing, and in that showing, I'm setting the expectation of what it looks like to submit an offer. And as we're submitting the offer, I'm setting the expectation of this is what happens with offer acceptance. And then with offer acceptance, I'm now setting the expectation of what comes next based on our contract. So, give your clients those bite-sized chunks of this is what we're doing now, and this is what comes next. Questions about that piece? So flip side of that, when we're on the listing side, which I know is the side we all want to be on because we get lots more time back when we're leveraging with listings, I will create a spreadsheet if it's a multiple offer situation because I want to keep my life in order. It becomes a lot sometimes. But really, I just want to make sure that every offer that comes through has all of the things that we're expecting to see. So I know that not everybody puts the offers in order the way that I do, and that's totally fine. I want to make sure that everything that we need to move forward and everything that was said to me about what the terms are in there. It becomes a little white noise sometimes when you're looking at these documents, right? Like, especially if it's a multiple offer situation, you're looking at a lot. So this is really where the system comes in for you guys to figure out what works best. I love checklists. I love spreadsheets. Like, I can't go wrong if I'm doing the same system each time, right? Like, we're in Keller Williams, we know that systems work. That's all that we leverage here, systems and models, and they do work. So figure out, what somebody else has and how you can borrow it for you. That offer checklist, both on the sending it and the receiving it, is going to be paramount. The conversation that you have with your client is huge when you are on the sell side, because your client is really relying on you to say, is this a good offer? Right? Like I hear that all the time, and I have to then ask my client, based on this offer price and these terms, is this a good offer for you? I can tell them if a lender has answered the phone. I do not tell if I've had a bad experience with an agent. It does happen, right? But like that is not going to influence my seller's offer acceptance, right? They're going to accept what's best for them. And I have to ask them, like, are these terms what you're looking for? And then I need to make sure that there is a net proceeds sheet for every single offer if it's at a price that they're not expecting. Closing date also impacts net proceeds as well. So if you have one that's a shorter closing and one that's a longer closing, you want to get the title company involved or use the title company's portal if they have that for you, and really figure out what that's going to look like and how it's going to impact the cash that is going to go into your client's pocket based on that. I think I said it earlier. I don't know like how much you feel comfortable with listings. Do you know what what are those pain points that sellers tend to hone in on when we're thinking about selling our home? What is it that we are most concerned about in that process? There's three.
I'm sorry, you're asking like as a seller, what would my seller be concerned about when listing their property?
Yes.
I think I don't have any listings, but I think they will be concerned about how quickly the home can sell. If they're gonna get the price that they want for it. And I mean, I guess it depends on if they need to sell the home to buy the next home. But those are things I think is how quickly it will sell and if they're gonna get what they expect price wise.
And the things that you're gonna do to market their home. That's the third one for me.
Okay. One more thing. If you are thinking about selling your home, what happens to a home when it's on the market?
I don't know, maybe a lot of foot traffic, people coming in and out from open houses or things like that.
Yes. And that's the convenience aspect of it. So when we're thinking about what our sellers like pain points are in general, that price always, right? Like, what am I going to get from this? The timeline, which those two are ones that can be very even depending on what somebody has going on. You know, if there's a deadline to move for a relocation, that timeline might be more driving in their choices than what the price is. That other pain point for sellers is going to be that convenience piece. How long am I going to have people coming going in my home? How often am I going to be interrupted, especially if there's little ones in the house? Think about what that's like. Our fur babies, are you kidding me? Are trying to get a dog in and out of the house every time there's a showing. Like, that's a whole lot. That's harder than a kid sometimes, right? So like, that's a whole thing. So when we're presenting offers to a seller, we really have to ask those questions like, is this what works for you? Are you taking this offer because it's the best one for you? Or are you taking this offer because they're saying that you can be out of, be done with this tomorrow, right? Like, what is your driving factor here? So when you're reviewing these offers, going through the terms, please make sure that you're having some really good conversations with your seller about what's the motivating factor for you in accepting this particular offer, and does that align with what you guys talked about in the beginning? So that's where like the notes coming in, putting things in command, making sure that we understand what our sellers want is really important. And then we need to make sure that we're communicating that really, really well with the agents that are involved. So anytime that I get an offer, I immediately am confirming to that agent, I've received the offer. I'm letting them know when I'm presenting the offer, or if there is currently just a deadline set, and I will let you know when we schedule the offer presentation. We don't do a ton of, it does come up, but we don't do a lot of like offer expirations here. So we could submit an offer and then, on a Monday and be told it's the deadline's Friday and we might not hear until Saturday. So we have a client who's sitting there for 6 days waiting to find out if their offer is going to be accepted or not. So, I want to make sure that I'm communicating that really, really clearly. I'm updating my spreadsheet. I am making sure that my client knows that an offer has come in. And so even when I have clients who set an offer, I ask them, like, what's the golden ticket offer for you that if it comes through, you don't want to wait until this time, and you want me to tell you right away that it comes through? And I'll tell you, like, golden ticket here is it's a cash offer. There's no inspections. They're going to do a quick closing, and it's at least at ask price or more. We do see where somebody can get away with not going crazy over when you've got all of the other terms. Do you want to know that when it comes through, or do you want to wait? And then we also need to be really careful as well, that fair housing laws, we want to make sure that there is nothing being crossed here where my seller client is getting information about a buyer that is potentially swaying who they're accepting an offer from as well. So that's another line to this. We want to make sure that, offers are being accepted based on what's presented and not what somebody went down the rabbit hole on Facebook of, because that happens. So, anytime that an offer comes through, it's a really solid opportunity to build a relationship with that co-op agent. And you want to make sure that you have all of the facts in place for your seller. I'm going to take my offer off of the screen. So in the Ignite booklet, it has a ton of information about the, like how to review the offer, the questions for you to ask. I think some of the questions are a little bit interesting because it talks about, have you worked with this buyer before? I don't know how often on the list side I would say that I've worked with a buyer before, unless it's an investor client, or an investor in the area that you see the same buyer pop up often. But we do see the same buyers agents. And again, really, really important that we are building those relationships. I am not going to sell every house in Baltimore by myself. I wouldn't want to. It sounds great in theory, I think, for some people, but that is a whole thing that, like, I like days off too. Like, I don't want to do all of that. So I want good relationships with the agents around me. I want to know other people. I want to build that rapport with them, because I want it to be something where it's really smooth, where I'm not going to tell my seller client, like, I worked with this agent before and it was bad or it was good. But I will know, hey, I can count on this agent to pull through with all of the things that need to be done. So we would go through all of those different pieces: receiving the offer, letting the other agent know that it's received, telling them when it's going to be presented. I'm going through that entire contract to make sure that the terms presented to me by that buyer's agent, is it what is in the contract, right? Like, you still need to double check. I'm updating my spreadsheet so that way I can share it with my clients. I'm vetting that financing and making sure that we're good to go. I also really want to double check, like, is there a home sale contingency? Is there anything that I need to be aware of? Is there going to be an issue with a proposed settlement date? Like, are there any things that I need to discuss potentially with the buyer agent? Saying, do you want to revise this before I present to the seller? And then I'm going to sit down and present to the seller. Pros and cons, guys. Pros and cons. What are some pros and cons of some offers if you were a seller or a seller's agent that you could think of that you would need to point out? What's a con? What would be a bad offer to receive?
As far as I'm concerned, as a because I have a house right now that's on the market. Um, at this point, under my price point, what I'm asking, um, and any contingency.
Okay.
That's how I feel
Yes.
right now.
Anything under ask, right? Like
Yeah,
our sellers are typically going to perceive that as a bad offer.
yeah.
I totally get that. That's a good answer. Sometimes the lender involved in it can be a pro or a con to the offer. If it is a pre-qualification rather than a pre-approval, that would be something that I would really want to keep an eye out for. Who can tell us what the difference between those two? What's a pre-qualification versus a pre-approval?
I'm just gonna take a little shot. Pre-qualifications, not necessarily getting pay stubs, doing getting tax information, doing checks like that. It's just, I guess, going by what someone may say. I'm not exactly sure how far they go with the pre-qualification, but the pre-approval, you're getting all of that information. You're checking, I guess, the credit, checking their W-2s, checking their tax forms and things like that. It's probably a little bit
Great
more.
answer. Absolutely. Good job, Dawn. That's 100%. So what Dawn just explained to us is that a pre-qualification means that somebody is telling us what they're making. And then the pre-approval is where the lender's actually collecting the information, verifying the information, running that hard credit check. So a pre-qualification means that you went online and you're like, yeah, I make $130,000 a year. And then somebody comes back through and they spit out this pre-qualification letter for you telling what you can afford based on this. Yeah, I make 130. And then a lender comes through and they're like, okay, well, you are self-employed. And so you think you make 130. And then by the time that we do expenses and take a look at your taxes, that's not what it is. So they can only lend to you on what that reported amount is. So that's why whether it's a buyer client or you have something coming through on the list side, pre-approval is really where it's at. And when I am walking through this process on the list side, I'm asking the lender specific questions about how, like, what have you collected? Where are we at in the verification process? Was a pre-underwriting completed? So we can get loans closed here in 3 weeks, 21 days, no problem, because we do pre-underwriting. So everything is already done. And then the only aspect of underwriting that is left is specific to that property. So is that something that's already been done, or are you waiting to collect information? Because I want to know how good to go it is. So those are some of the things too, like as you're starting to get into listings, that's a great conversation to have with somebody to tell them what you do to verify that their house is going to get to closing. Because getting under contract is one thing. We can take great pictures, we can put it out on social media, we can do the thing. What am I able to tell you is going to get you to that closing table and actually put the money in your pocket, though? And so that financing piece is really, really, really big. Your client can also counter an offer as well if it comes through. Lots of times we get like that highest and best, and you don't necessarily have to counter right now, but I do believe that's going to come back for us one day. So it will happen in your real estate careers that you will have a seller who's going to write a counter. It does happen. There's also then what we're going to send out to people. So this is so much stuff when we look at it, right? Like we pull together that buyer offer, we're communicating the entire time with our buyer clients. What, are you doing? What do you need? Does this work for you? We're communicating with the listing agent, making sure that we're pulling it together the best way possible. When we're on the list side, communication again is key, right? So we're communicating with that buyer's agent the whole time, and we're communicating with our seller the whole time. And we also want to make sure my best practice is everything is recapped in writing as well. So everything that we have a conversation about, especially this time, I do it all the time, but very much so at this point, I'm recapping every conversation in email, whether it's, if I'm on the buy side, I'm reiterating the terms that we're putting in for the offer in an email. So that way we have the conversation. Now I want you to see it before you sign it. And then I'm doing the same thing with the seller. Hey, just confirming, this is the offer that you've chosen. I know you're about to sign off on it. Let me know what questions you have. And then once the seller chooses the offer, we're loading it back up into our e-signing and we're getting it signed. And then there's a ton of other work that's coming, and it's like usually quick and in a hurry. So we have our inspection contingencies here, which we have the EMD, which comes next, and then the inspection contingencies. For you guys in different areas, what's that very next thing when an offer is accepted that you know that you have to get your client ready to go for? Like, what's that next expectation to set for them? I put you guys to sleep. What happened? So are you just not sure? Is this the foreign territory class that I took on? Is that what I did?
I was gonna say for here, kind of next steps would be attorneys. Attorneys are involved here, so they have to link with an attorney as kind of next steps here in New York, if you will.
Okay. So how would you have that conversation with either the buyer client, if you're on the buy side, or the seller? What would you be explain to them that they need to prepare for next?
For me or anybody? Oh.
Go for it.
I don't know. I feel like for me, what's been kind of helpful would be like your checklist, if you will. I've noticed like the checklisting is pretty popular. So I do like that concept of having the checklist ready to roll for them so they kind of know what to expect in their next stages and the next process and what they kind of have to do next. So that's probably what I would do to kind of prep them that before they even got to the stage of, hey, you need an attorney now. For me, I would believe they would need to be prepped with that before we even list and kind of so they have an idea of what the process is before they even sign a contract.
Awesome. That's really good. For us, I would say I have that conversation if I'm on the buy side. And again, like, we give so much information, and the more comfortable you become having these conversations, the easier it is sometimes to forget how much information we're handing over, right? Like in the beginning, we hear it and we're like, yeah, this is so new. There's so much of it. And then we get really used to saying it. And it's almost like we know that it's a lot. And then we still have to like chunk it down for our clients. So I like the way that you phrase that you're going to tell them that in the beginning. And now we're pretty much just saying it again, like they should know. And now I'm making sure they know this is what comes next. And I do the same thing. I have conversations. I'm walking them through all of the steps of the process. And then like, here is what we're going to do next. So if we're on the buy side and offer is accepted, 2 steps that are super important for us right now. We want to get our EMD submitted. The title company is going to reach out to you with wire. Here in the state of Maryland, every single thing is just calendar day, except for our earnest money deposit. That actually goes by business day. So if I have an offer that is accepted on a Saturday, then my EMD 2 days doesn't actually start until that Monday because that's the next business day. Now, my inspection period starts Sunday because we were ratified on Saturday. So those things too, make sure that you understand what those dates are so you can clearly explain that to clients as well. So I'm telling a client, like, we want to get the EMD ready to go. And with that, the title company needs to get our contract, and then they're going to contact you. And then the other step is that we're scheduling our inspections as soon as possible. And when I'm on the sell side, the big thing there is, all right, you're under contract. You can take a deep breath now. All of the things that you were doing to make your house look like HGTV, which is not your thing, we can get rid of it. Your dog bowls can be everywhere again. Like, I always tell my sellers your pharmaceuticals, your firearms, and your valuables need to be either out of your house or locked up during the showing period, right? Like, again, minimizing opportunity. Your normal life can go back. I don't want to know about your normal life really, but like all your stuff can come back home, whatever you did. So you're good to go. The next thing is that the house is going to have the inspection take place, and we don't want to be there for the inspection on the sell side. Here, I don't want my seller to have conversations with the buyer during the inspection, because what happens is somebody could agree to things that I don't necessarily want them to agree to. That's not in the best interest for them. So we always prep for that. Like, here's your next step. And then other than that, my sellers don't have to leave the house again until we get to final walkthrough and closing. So knowing what comes next in this state is going to be a really big deal. I would definitely say think through, what is that checklist for you? What are the conversations in different times, the points that you want to make with either the buyer client or the seller client? And what are some of those questions that you want to ask? Knowing the conversation before it happens means that you're just confident about what needs to come next. It doesn't mean that you know the answers, right? Like, we don't know all the answers. It changes each time. But when you're confident about what needs to drive the conversation, whatever somebody's throwing back at you is going to feel like it's chunked down, it's bite size, and you can take that on. So biggest thing with any of these is just what would come next for somebody, and how are you explaining that to them after you've communicated all of the pieces. And that is the crux of this entire part with we're talking about offers, is communication and expectation setting. All lots of conversation. What questions do you guys have about any of that? We're just the listing process, or how to get listings, or anything. Like, if you don't have a listing and we're talking about that, it seems like I don't know what comes next, but what are the things that you need to get to that place? Or what are some of the questions that you have about how to have the conversation to really feel like they're professionals that you guys are?
How do you get listings? Because I think I might want to be a listing agent.
So being a listing agent is awesome. I think everybody wants to be a listing agent. I do like working with buyers. I think it's, there is a satisfaction to handing over keys to somebody who's a first-time home buyer for me. I was a single mom when I bought my house. Generational gaps broken. Nobody else in my house owned, or nobody else in my family owned a house. So it was like a big deal, and I love being a part of that for other people. However, being a listing agent means that I own my time, and that matters to me. So there's a lot of steps to getting listings. And I'm going to tell you, the number one thing with getting listings is being consistent. Just transparently, things fall apart in the follow-up, right? Like, how many times have you had a conversation with somebody and they say no, and then you don't follow up with them again? And it's rhetorical. You don't have to tell, but like, think through that, right? Like, somebody said no, and then you're like, oh, okay. It's follow-up. We're having conversations with people, and we have to, one, with a seller, they're a little bit more savvy most of the time than we would have a conversation with a first-time home buyer. A first-time home buyer doesn't have equity that they're worried about. That bottom line number isn't a big deal. They haven't been through the home buying process before. A seller has. And sometimes with our seller, we almost have to like undo some of the thinking. So whenever I have an opportunity to talk to a seller about a potential listing, I want to make sure I'm as armed with facts as possible. So I know the market. I know the details. I know the comps that sold recently. I understand how condition affects it. I am finding out as much as I can about the terms of those recently closed, which sometimes is in our MLS, sometimes isn't. It just depends. And then I'm farming areas very specifically. I personally am a sphere-based agent. I also host events. I am not somebody, I'm still active agent. I am a productivity coach. I am director of productivity and sales for Baltimore. I'm living a life, guys. Like, I got a lot going on, and I love all of it, but I have to get the most bang for my time every single time I can. So I do events. I don't do home buyer seminars. I think that they serve a purpose, but I want to do things like wealth building. I have an event series called Brew Your Assets, and I hold it at breweries, and I bring in speakers who talk about wealth building on different avenues. So we've had actually an estate attorney come in and teach us how to protect our assets. We have done one where somebody's talking about how you can leverage insurance, and it's not the way that TikTok tells you you can. I promise it can be done, just not that way. And then I also do self-defense seminars. I train jujitsu for fun. So I bring people into my gym and I do seminars for women in the community. And through that like contribution of giving back, all free events, I leverage the partners that I know in the community. So there's a cost, but it's not a heavy cost. And I also partner with vendors like title and lender. So that way, if there is a cost, I'm minimizing mine because, you know, I do fully believe that just because I am having a good month doesn't mean I need to spend money, right? Like I need to be smart all the time. So I do lean into that. And then I'm getting in front of people and then I'm having conversations. And that's going to be the biggest thing right now. Like, what are you doing that's setting you apart from somebody else? And I don't want to hurt feelings here, but that postcard that's being sent out, that everybody else is sending a very similar postcard, it's just going in the recycling bin, hopefully not the trash, and they made it to the recycling, right? Like, what are you doing that's setting yourself apart? And more importantly, here's the big thing to it. What do you love to do? And how are you able to incorporate that into putting yourself in front of other people? And that's where you're going to win. And it might seem like, what does that have to do with listings? It takes me from being somebody, just to somebody that is known, liked, and trusted by people that I didn't know the day before. And then when I'm showing up being myself and I'm having conversations about things that matter to me, and I'm able to talk about the current market, I know the statistics, I study it because it's my job. This is my profession, right? And I want to make sure I'm telling people the right information. And then I'm somebody that they come back to when they have questions, and that's how I win listings. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but that's how I do it.
Thank you.
I would definitely encourage any agent, right? Because we most of the time have been many things before we became an agent, right? Like, which is amazing. We bring a ton of experience to the table. We don't give ourselves enough credit for what we've done before we got into real estate and how that translates into what makes us good real estate agents. So think about the things that you like to do and how are you incorporating those things to build your database? And that's really what it is. Let's build the database, right? Like, where is the quality here? Yes, we need quantity, but where is the quality in it? And how can you leverage your time, your interests, your hobbies to put yourself in conversation with as many people as possible? When I joined my team, I was a solo agent before. I joined it because I wanted to get my butt kicked, to be honest with you. Like, I knew that I could do more. And I used to joke around that it was me and the frat boys. I'm going to be 40 in a couple of months, and they're all 30 and younger. So it's me and the frat boys. And they gave me 2 weeks, and I had to add 500 people to my database, and I had to call every single person in my database and have conversations and come back to them in 2 weeks. And I thought, all right, I'm here for it, right? Like, that competitive person in me, I was going to do it. But what it taught me was the power of conversation. And I know that I would never want to make 500 phone calls to people in my database in 2 weeks again. That's not my jam. So I do events instead. So if there's something that you can go to that gives you an opportunity to have conversations, just be yourself, but show up and know what's happening in the market. How many times, who here has said hello to somebody and it kind of surprises you because all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, so you're in real estate now. What's happening in real estate? And then do you know what to say? Do you know what to say though?
No, that's why I don't tell people I'm an agent. Now I know what to say. Yeah, but I wasn't telling
Oh,
people I was.
Alicia, everybody should know that you're an agent.
I mean, they know it's on my Instagram, and I'll post some like real estate stuff, but like if I go out, because I'm very, very, very social. So if I go out and people come up to me, obviously, guys, like they want to talk and stuff. Oh, what do you do? You know how it goes to work? What do you do? Whatever. Like I'll tell them, like, I have an HR job, I love it. Like, I'm a real estate agent as well. And then they're like, oh yeah, the market sucks. This is this. What's your take on it? I'm like, you want a drink? Like, I don't know what to say to y'all people because I don't know. But now I know. Ciao.
Oh my gosh. So I will invite you to come to our weekly market update. It's on Tuesday mornings. Even though we talk about this area, we talk about national statistics as well and what has changed. And I'm telling you, if you want to level up your conversation, arm yourself with facts. That's going to be the big thing. Because when somebody comes to me and tells me the market sucks, I can clearly tell them how it doesn't. I can absolutely tell them how in our area, the home values are still increasing, and those that we are seeing price drop are because they were not priced appropriately in the first place. And I can pull all of the comps to show you how that one went way above where it should have been, but that actual home value is still increasing. And I can talk about how the days on market are still really short. And really what our problem is right now is that we had a lot of buyers who influxed the market when we were at 3% interest rates. And now we're at 8%, which seems terrible for people who wanted to be a first-time home buyer, and 3%, but really 8% last 20 to 30 years isn't far off from that average. And you're still getting ahead. If you're just paying 8% interest, that becomes a mortgage expense, or I'm sorry, a tax expense, over paying 100% rent to somebody who's building their wealth off of your hard work instead. So
See,
there's
now I
always
know
a good
that
market.
information. Right. Now that I know that, because I didn't know, because my trainer had informed me. She was like, do you know, like over the past like 50 years, like the interest rate was like basically like 7% like it is now. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, what they're talking about low interest and my house being 2 to 3%. She was like, they're talking about COVID. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that makes sense. She was like, girl, that would never happen again. So now when people come to me, I know what to say. I just know that negative energy, well, negative things spread faster than positive. You know what I mean? And especially, I'm gonna be honest, me being young and black, and you know what I mean? Like, oh, this girl, like, she's over here, like, saying she's a real estate agent, but she don't know anything. Negative information will spread so quick and get around over positive. So that's why I kind of step back and don't say anything until I have my information. But now I have it.
I get that and I respect that. I am not somebody who, if I'm not sure, I am quick to tell you that is a great question and let me go find out. Right. And I say that to everybody. I'm not going to blow smoke towards anybody. If I don't know, I don't know. And I'm not ashamed that I don't know, because I know that I can go find out. Right. Like, and I'm going to do that. So I think that's very respectable. Also, get in front of it, like make videos, talk about what's happening, talk about why it is a good time to buy, why, this historical low is not coming back to us. Get in front of some of those conversations where people say, well, I'm not going to sell my house because I have this low interest rate. That's amazing. I totally get that. And did you know that once you start collecting rent, within your first 2 years of collecting rent, that you can take 75% of that and use it as income? So that way it's going to, if you can get somebody who's going to pay more than your mortgage, which let's hope if you're collecting rent, they're paying more than your mortgage, right? If 75% of that is the same as your mortgage payment, you just canceled out your mortgage payment. And now you can use that and not have that debt against you when you go to buy your next house. And what are some creative ways that we could work through making that happen for you? right? Like talk about those things, make short video clips telling people like, you might not be selling your house today, but let me tell you how to put money in your pocket and they're never going to forget you, right? Like how are you helping them grow their lives into the goals that they probably haven't even discovered yet for themselves? And what little drops of information, value adds are you providing them to let them know that you do know what's up and nobody knows more than you in your area, and it doesn't matter how anybody looks at you because you know who you are and they can't question it anymore. And that's what real estate is all about. When you have the facts, you're good to go, and don't be afraid of them, because you sound like you know how to have all the conversations, right? Like that's how you're going to get the listings.
That was good, Jen.
I was getting ready to say
That
that.
was good.
I
She
was
was
just getting ready
speaking.
to say that.
I came into real estate because I was a teacher and I got really tired of working so hard and hitting a ceiling. Like I bought a house as a single mom. I had a master's degree and I was waiting tables on the weekends because teaching doesn't pay the bills around here. Right. And like I will never forget what that was like. And I got so tired of it. And I will tell anybody that when you have hit that like pain point and you want something different for yourself, you'll know it because you're going to do anything and everything possible to make that happen. And, like whatever obstacle it is that's in your way, you just have to blow it up. Like that's literally all it is. They're going to be there. Just blow it up. I will, anybody who wants it, you come to our weekly market update. It's 8:30 in the morning, Tuesday mornings. You're welcome to come to it. Tell us what's happening in your market. We'll talk about the differences and how are we going to win together. Like those conversations always come back to, why is now a good time for a buyer to buy and why is now a good time for a seller to sell, and what do we need to do as the agents to make sure people know that, and telling the truth, right? Like I'm not telling them it's a good time to sell if it's not a good time to sell. I'm the first person to tell somebody the truth about it. But like Alicia pointed out, there is a narrative out there about real estate that is not the truth. And how do we as the professionals fix that for people? Because I don't want somebody to not do something in their life because they're afraid, because it's on the news or somebody told them or somebody down the street had a bad experience, right? Like it's my job to make sure that they know this is reality and you can go to that next step if that's what you want to do. Let me stop sharing this really quick. I'll put our calendar invite with our Zoom in it. And I'm so serious. I would love to see your faces on it. Come to it. Tell us what's happening. Tell us we're crazy. Whatever makes sense for you. Just come join us. What other questions do we have? What are some other things that you feel like are obstacles in conversations? Are we having conversations?
So I'm glad you brought that up too. Afifa, why are you laughing? Don't do this.
I
Don't
like
do this. She does
questions.
this
Go for
every
it.
time. Um, so with the conversation, okay. So I think where I'm stuck at too is that so my trainer was like, I'm supposed to be having 75 conversations a week. Um, and she was like, your database is basically like your phone, like your personal device. Um, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then she was like, reach out to people, obviously that you don't talk to every day. Um, and have conversations. Like you were saying, how you had to call like 200 people. She was like, reach out to people in your database that you haven't talked to. And I'm looking like, girl, and say what? Like, I just feel like that's so weird to me. And then she was like, literally just be like, hi, like, how are you? I hope all is well. I haven't talked to you in forever. But I'm like, that's weird. Cause I think for me, I would look at you like at a text message or a phone call, like, why are you calling me? Who is this? You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
think that's stuff, and I don't do it.
So what we want to do is figure out what does work for you. I do not really care for phone calls. Do I make them? I do. I was not like the girl that was hanging out on the phone for an hour though. You know what I mean? Like that's not my MO. I also love to text. So when people were like, you needed to call, I was like, this is very foreign for me. You want me to do what?
Right.
I'll
I
send a
know
text. I could send a text, but I still don't know what to say. Like a random, hey, how are you?
social media stalking 100%. So I am great in conversations with a purpose. If you tell me to go make small talk over there, that's where I go to die, right? Like that is not my strong suit whatsoever. I will have in-depth conversations with anybody who wants to have them, but if you want me to talk about what happened in sports yesterday, like we're done. I'm not there at all. So I stalk people on social media. So when I'm doing my bold, my DTD2 calling, and I'm doing my quarterly call, there are some people that are not actually going to get a call. It's going to be a text from me, because if I called them, it would be like alarming. You know, like they would really legitimately wonder who died, because that's not how we communicate. And I do
Right.
think that there needs to be a bit of an evolution when we have these conversations. Like, I'm not forcing a method of communication on somebody in my database. That is not how we communicate. I want to build our relationship, not damage it just because I'm trying to do something. So I do think it's worthwhile, and that you're acknowledging that's not how some people that you're going to communicate with. And when you're trying to rekindle that relationship, look them up on social media. What are they up to? Comment on their posts, share something that they put, right? Like do some little things that's going to gain attention, and it's going to do a couple of things beyond that too. So one, you are doing a step to rebuild that relationship and now give you guys something to talk about. Two, when you comment on other people's stuff, now their people are also seeing what you're saying in their comments, and you're potentially getting new friends and followers, and you're just getting more exposure because the algorithm is going to bump you up now in what other people are scrolling through. So there's many ways that that's beneficial. And it all starts with the fact that you are rebuilding a relationship with a lot of positive byproducts. I have had transactions that closed because we started out with a DM on Instagram, and I like didn't even know their phone number until we were going into doing our exclusive buyer agency agreement, so that way I could pull it together for them, right? Like we communicated the whole time in a way that made sense for us to communicate. And then when I needed the information, it was there. I'm still a professional. I still answered all of the questions. That's just, it didn't start with a phone call, and that's okay. So I'm not saying that, anybody who's telling you to just pick up the phone is wrong for it. If you need extra steps to get to that phone call point, though, there are things that you can do to build that relationship and put yourself out there at the same time. And social media is a powerful tool. I'm not saying we're going to make videos and be viral tomorrow. I wouldn't even want that life. It does create a digital portfolio for anybody who looks me up to know that I am in real estate. I know what I'm talking about in real estate. I'm not somebody who posts every single closing. I'm just not, right? Like I want to talk about the information that I'm sharing, so you can kind of figure out what that is for you and make sure that you're still being you in the process while you build that up.
Okay.
I do not want to hold anybody over, but if somebody does have questions, we're like 1 minute away. I'm more than happy to hang out if you guys do have questions, but I hope this was helpful. I tend to derail a little bit, so hopefully I got all of the information in that you needed, and I put my email in there. That Zoom link is our Tuesday morning. It's 8:30 a.m. But if you email me, I can add you to the invite to make it a little easier. So it's not just like, why do I have the Zoom link and where did it come from? But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight. And again, I'll hang out for a few minutes for any questions that anybody has.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I was supposed to tell you guys what comes next too. So in your next one, you guys are going to be talking about, I think they're writing an offer piece. I'll have to look up for you which one comes next. But yes.
For the survey, I'm assuming you have the survey too?
I do. Oh my gosh. Thank you.
I was gonna say, is your name Jen up there, or is it something else?
It should just be Jen, I go by Jen for everything. So it would just be Jen Williams. And then where did she put it? Thank you.
I mean, as soon as we type KW, it just pops up because we've been doing them every
You've been
day.
doing, okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah.
For me,
Thank
anyway.
you.
I don't know about everybody else.
Thank you so much for reminding me about that. I'm really terrible about it. Like I do enough of this that I should have more evals than I have. So thank you.
No problem. Alicia, I was just going to piggyback on it. I don't know if you were on at the beginning of the call, but she was like, oh, what did you guys do? And I was like, I did my 10-5 months because that's really, really easy for me to jump on social media, just with my friends or text or slide into DMs. But what I've really found helpful, because I'm a talker, but I don't want to talk to people on the phone. I feel like I can contact more people via text at one time. Like I can hit a lot of people in text or sliding into DMs. And I think that works for me, but like the people I haven't talked to in a long time or like since college, like I'll just randomly be like, hey, I saw your post, like, which I really didn't. I was being a creep. But just going in and just talking about like, oh, congratulations on your new baby, or just start like that conversation and that reconnection and doing the forward, like the family, occupation, recreation, dream thing. That's really easy to kind of slide back in. And then like maybe in a couple of days, like another picture or comment on something else. And then eventually start talking again. And
But
then,
a lot of people in my phone, I have my number since I ever had a phone in life.
oh my God, me too. Since I was like,
so I probably have numbers from 1689, and I was even born then. But like, I don't have all those people on my social media, like on my
look them
Instagram.
up.
But
And if
it's
you
like
ask them
name, like
random,
Alan.
they'd be like,
It could be like Alan. Who the heck is Alan?
oh.
So I think honestly, what I'm gonna do is just, get over your fear. I think I'm gonna just text them like, hey, how are you? Haven't heard from you. Hope all is well. Just do what it do. Cause like they said, they either gonna text you back or they're not.
Then but you could always look them up on Facebook or social media, because you can always say, oh, it requested you, like, how it'll say like, oh, suggest add this person as a friend, and just be like, hey, I haven't talked to him forever. My Instagram suggested you, whatever. They don't know that it didn't. You look them up. They don't know.
Do you text them on your personal phone or on your business
Slide in
phone?
the DM. I go DM. For me.
I use a personal phone for everything. I don't differentiate any phone numbers. Everything is one number for me. And I do that because I really do like this fear base. I focus on the relationship building aspect. So it's like, hey, here's my number. I also like do all of the creeper stuff that you guys were just talking about, where I'm like, I haven't talked to them in so long. I need to look them up on Facebook. Like, what are they up to? And then I'll also text people where I'm like, I don't know why I have this number. And I'll literally text them that, like, I have your number. It says your name is Alan. And I don't really remember why we met, but like, before I just delete you, do you want to be friends again? And like, sometimes it gets real weird. I'm not even going to pretend otherwise. Right. But like, let's hope that they're a good person and then we'll take it from there. But I'll send wild stuff to people. I mean, like if I have a buyer or a seller who's ghosting me, I'll send them like, one, maybe you just don't want to talk today. Two, maybe you're really busy. Three, maybe you've fallen and you can't get up. But either way, just let me know what you need right now. And like people will respond to me and they're like, all right, fine, we'll have a conversation. So like don't be afraid to be weird. It's fine. Just be yourself.
Right.
Send them stuff. It doesn't make us less professional that we have personalities. And I think, especially when we're coming from, like professional worlds of whatever that is, it's almost like we're taught like you got to be like tame, you know what I mean? And like I'm in business for myself. I'm my own boss and I'm going to be a good one. So I'm going to do the things that I need to make sure that my boss is taking care of me, and I'm going to be myself because my boss can't tell me otherwise. So just have fun with it. And if somebody doesn't like it, they're probably not somebody you want to work with anyway.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for all of you. I mean, you guys asked really good questions tonight, so keep it up. Just keep the momentum going. It's really good. Has Ignite been helpful for everybody? Do you feel like it's kind of like giving you a framework of what to do?
I think it has.
Good. Good.
very helpful. And I think one of the things that I love the most is that I'm meeting people from other places because I'm the only person in Atlanta, and I feel like I know everyone. Like I know Alicia's in Florida by way of Philly. She's still claiming Philly. And I know that
Girl,
Catherine's in
it's my
Rochester.
neighbor, the way we talk.
I feel like it. I feel like it. I was gonna message you and be like, "Did you go back and see Coach T?"
Girl, yes. I be
I gotta
texting
order my
them.
book. I gotta order. I've been having meetings all week. I'm sorry. That's another Ignite instructor who invited us to one of his team meetings, and Alicia and I showed up on the same day.
Yes.
It
That's
was very
awesome.
it was very interesting, and they're all in Maryland, a lot of Maryland people. But I think it's just I'm enjoying meeting people from other places because I feel like I have points of contact for referrals because that's easy money, like,
Yeah.
oh, this person's in here. And I actually had someone in Maryland during my sliding into DMs, but she's like in Prince George. Unfortunately, her and her husband broke up. And she's like, her and her sisters have moved in together. And she's like, oh, we're gonna looking to buy a house. I'm like, oh, do you have a realtor? And she's like, well, I have a realtor that I like. I said, well, you know what? If things don't work out, let me know. I know people there, which I mean, only from the Zoom call, but I felt good to say, if you decide you don't like that person, let me know. And I'm from New York too, but I'm from Queens. So
Oh,
so I don't know much
okay.
about Rochester, but if that's
Okay.
someone up there, I'm like, oh, well, I know someone.
I was gonna say no, I know, because I was thinking about you too, Afifa, because so my mom lives in North Carolina, and I'm actually gonna be down there, and I've been to Atlanta like a bunch. I love Savannah, I love Tybee Island, so I was
Okay.
like, oh, I got a new friend down that way,
I went to
like,
college in North Carolina when Jen was like, "Oh, my sister is in Durham," and I'm like, "Oh, I went to ECU in Greenville." I was always in
Wow.
the Durham area, but
I lived in Charlotte for like 7 years, so I've got lots of connections down that way as well. So it has been very cool to, meet different people. And like Alicia, shout out to you in Florida, girl. Like
Yes.
I'm in New York, that warm weather in the summer for me, or in the winter for me is like, like, oh, I got a new connection in Florida.
Yes.
It's
Oh,
been kind of nice to just meet people, like you said, Afifa, from all over, kind of
yeah,
on the East Coast, and kind of build those relationships too. Because I'm already like stressing, like, oh my God, I'm gonna miss these people next week when we only have one class. I won't be seeing their faces every week.
yeah, that's crazy. But
Call me.
oh,
and lastly, Jen, I do want to say I appreciate you sharing your story about like being a single mom and buying your first home.
Yes.
It seems like now that you're thriving, like you're a productivity coach and you're doing all these things, I feel like that gives us, I mean, not to say that we're single moms, but I feel like that gives us a little hope. Like you can start anywhere in this
Yep.
business. And if you're going to put in the work, then you can do anything. You're hosting events and spending, I'm thinking that all the events that my office throws and how much money, I'm like, geez, how much they pay for this party? Like to be
oh,
able to just freely like do those things. I'm like, oh, that's great. So I'm going to be able to do that as well.
thanks. Yeah, just find the stuff that you're into. Like that's so I closed 5 transactions in my first 7 months and I was still teaching. So that was kind of like I had told myself, if I'm going to get out of teaching, this is what I have to do. And I wanted to get out of teaching because I was tired of waiting tables on the weekends. Like I had to make it work. And I do think that like when you hit that point, you're going to do whatever you have to. And then on top of that, like it makes it so much more satisfying when you're like, I've hit a point where I can also give back. Like I don't want it to just be like, cool, I did something. Like I want to do something because now I get to give back to the community that did help support me when I needed it. And it's pretty incredible how it all comes full circle. So that's awesome. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. And events do not have to be expensive. Don't let anybody fool you. Get other people to pay for them. I'm not even kidding. I like my like vendor partners make fun of me because I'm like, I don't know, guys. I think that I can find this place for free. And they're like, just chill. We'll pay for it. It's fine. So make sure they know. I would totally recommend that you guys like stay in touch. And I mean, even if it's like a role play or conversation practice or just like accountability friends, you know what I mean? Like that encouragement that comes along with like, hey, like, how's it going? What do you need? Because real estate is a tough business. It's an incredible business. I love it. I would never do anything else now that I'm in it. And I will say, like, there's times you're like I'll be in a conversation with my coach and it's like never fails when I'm in that conversation. I'm like, about to cry, and I'm like, it's not going the way that it's supposed to, and I'm doing all of the things, and then like the next week I'm like, oh, I contracts accepted and listing agreements, like it's always on that like right there, and then it happens. And when you have friends that you get to talk to about who understand it, it makes it so much better. So like stay in touch with each other. It'll really, really help you in those moments. You're like, am I doing what I'm supposed to? Like you are. It's just tough sometimes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Absolutely.
you.
All right. Well, come see me on Tuesday mornings. It would be incredible to see you in there. It's nothing else. It's a lot of how do I have conversations. It'll definitely help you out. And hopefully I just get to see your faces and you guys can update me on how everything's going.
Oh, should I send you my email for the link?
So I put my email in there, and you can definitely send me yours as well. And I can actually add you guys to the invite right now if you want.
Okay. I just sent mine. Because I'm like, any type of real estate conversation, even though we're not in the same state, but just
So we do talk about like the national, what's happening. We talk about what's happening in our market too. So I know that wouldn't directly apply to you, but it will also really help you figure out what are some of the statistics that you can look up in your market as well. And then you would already have the framework for how to have the conversation with it too. And I will say, as a coach, it's always amazing when other people show up and like raise the bar for our brand new agents too. So that way they can see like my agents didn't show up tonight. I can't wait to shame them. Like, what, are you tired of hearing my voice? Where were you? Why are you not doing this? So yes, show up. It'll help me out if nothing else. All right, I'm sending these through. If you don't see it, let me know. But you guys will be on the invite, and then it's every Tuesday morning at 8:30. We usually, I think it's scheduled for 45 minutes, but I want to say we're usually done by 9 o'clock because we try to just get it in before we would do our lead gen and appointment setting. So that way we feel super good about what we're going to say in our conversations that day.
okay.
Okay. Did all of you guys get an invite?
Let me check. Ouch. Wait, that's not you.
It might come from Red Carpets. It'll either come from Pro Coach or Red Carpet.
I don't see anything.
Yeah, me neither. Because I get notifications.
I was gonna say I haven't received it yet either, but
Yes.
Being slow, maybe.
You guys are supposed to be in the bed. I'll come in there in just a second, okay? Oh, I got something. It just came.
Okay. All right. Hopefully it was just being slow. So it should
Yeah,
come
me
through
too.
for everybody. Perfect. All right.
thank you.
Oh, yep, me too.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, ladies, and have a great
Thank
night.
you. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one. Bye.
Bye.